In today's video, we'll be painting a Black Templars Primaris Marine from Games Workshop's Warhammer 40,000. The first step is to prime the miniature. I have chosen to use grey as this will provide a great base for the lighter areas such as the shoulder pads and the sword. The primer that we'll be using is the Halford's Grey Plastic Primer, as it gives a really high quality finish for a great price. However, any primer should work here. Now we will look at painting the armour. The first colour we will apply is a Baden Black. We'll do this in two thin layers which will give us a nice smooth finish. You could choose to prime the miniature using a black spray to potentially avoid this step. However, for consistency, I would have done this step anyway to ensure that any later touch-ups would be using the same paint. During this step we will be applying the Abaddon Black all over the armour sections of the miniature, excluding only the inner sections of the shoulder pad and the right kneecap. These will be painted as a sort of light beige colour later on in the process, and they will really benefit from having the lighter primer colour as a base to work from later on. With the base layer of Abaddon Black done, we'll be moving on to a 50-50 mixture of Abaddon Black and Steggersdale Green. Using this mixture, we want to start to accentuate the volumes of the miniature, boosting its overall depth. We will achieve this by choosing a direction for a light source and painting the parts of the miniature that would be exposed to this light. For this miniature I'll be using a frontal light that is slightly offset to our left or the miniature's right. With that layer done, we will now continue to shape the volumes, now using pure Steggersdale Green, starting a gentle gradation which will end up in the final highlight. Make sure that with this colour we target a smaller area than the last colour. The smaller area needs to be targeted where there would be a harsher highlight, for example closer to the edge of the knuckles and in the centre of the highlighted colour of the head. Next up we have a 50-50 mixture of Steggersdale Green and Sotek Green. With this lighter mixture we will continue to shape the volumes of the miniature, basically repeating the previous step but targeting a smaller area again. After we finish this step, we will be moving on to using pure Sotek Green and laying down a thick edge highlight layer. This is where we edge highlight the model, but we are making the highlight intentionally thick so that we go over the area with another highlight later. The final step to finish off the Black Templars armour is the final edge highlight. For this we'll be using the Vallejo Panzer Aces White. For this final highlight step, we want to target the areas of the model most exposed to our chosen light source. For example, this would be any of the edges and the central parts to where we've been highlighting in the previous steps. Using a final highlight of white will really help the model to read as black that's been highlighted with blue, rather than a blue model that's had its shadows really accentuated. And with that final highlight, that completes the black elements of the armour. Next we'll be moving on to the shoulder pads. I've seen a few different versions of the Black Templars online with regards to the colour mainly of their shoulder pads. I have seen a lot of white, but personally I prefer more of a light beige off-white, and for this we'll be using Vallejo model colour German camo beige. This colour will be applied to the inner sections of the shoulder pads as well as the knee that we left the base primed colour earlier. The next step is to provide some shadows. For this we're going to use a 50-50 mixture of Vallejo's model colour German camo medium brown and German camo beige. Using this we will focus the colour into the areas that are going to be least exposed to our chosen light source. This will be the sort of backs of the shoulder pads and the sort of underside, under right hand side of the knee pad. This new colour can be quite harsh next to the previous colour used, so you may want to create another midpoint between these two colours to soften the transition between the shadow and the base colour. Next we're going to be starting to highlight the shoulder pads, and to do this we're going to be using the 50-50 mixture of German camo beige and splinter camouflage base. This will be applied to areas of the shoulder pads and the knee guard that are more exposed to our chosen light source, so things that are over to the left hand side of the model as we are looking at it. With that step done, we're going to add a bit of extra depth to the model's right shoulder pad. It's got some battle damage and some scratches and scrapes on there, so we're going to use Citadel's Agrax Earthshade to get into these and really boost the depth of these scratches and make that a lot more interesting to look at. And with that step complete, that completes the shoulder pad. Now, using Rhinox hide, we're going to put a base layer on all the pouches on the miniature. the base layer done, we're now going to be moving on to using Vallejo model colour German camo medium brown. We're going to be using this to highlight the pouches and create a base layer for some scratches that are going to break up the flat surfaces, creating a bit more visual interest. With this step done, we're going to add some Cadian fleshstone to make a 50-50 mix. Using this, we're going to selectively edge highlight and aim for the middle of the scratches and the most exposed edges. With this step done, that completes the pouches. And that is how I paint my Black Templars power armour, and also how I paint leather pouches. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I hope you found it useful. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like to let me know, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to keep up to date with future content I will be making. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, please comment them down below, I will be reading them all. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you again next time.